right, Cristina Gutierrez here, COO with Simple CFO Solutions. I'm here again with another CFO that's a part of our team, and we're pulling back the curtain again. We're interviewing Aaron Jurski. He's here with me. Welcome, Aaron. Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you.
Aaron has been with us since November 2024. He's super committed to improving the business of all his clients, no matter what it takes. I know Aaron came on like, I'll take a few clients. I'll do this, I'll do that. And then he never ceases to amaze me. When we get a client, we're like, this is perfect for Aaron. We contact him and he's like, sure, yeah, I'll take him on. So he definitely works with a ton of clients now, shows them, a lot of value, has been able to not only improve their business financially, but coach them on business, help them with what he's been through. He's got a vast background in real estate, understands every step of it. He's personally has made an impact on me and Simple CFO, and just an all-around great guy. And I just love the way he helps with financial clarity and helps the team. He's always there and just never stops at, helping wherever he possibly can. So, Aaron.
Yes, thank you. That was really nice.
Hey, I love you guys. Like, we're family. And, even though we're far away, or like, this new world way of being remote and everybody being in different places, I truly feel like we're all family and like we're friends. And, we get to speak and hang out and chat a lot. And that's what we're doing here. So kind of fun. So real quick, give us a 30 to 60 second version of who you work with, who's made an impact on you, and, what you do as a CFO, and maybe some clients that you work with, and, just kind of a small snippet.
Well, I would say that I think I get all of the unique clients that come to Simple CFO. So my background is as a principal and investor in mostly commercial real estate, and then in the private equity space, with a great deal of background on debt, specifically leverage financing, and a variety of different things. So I get a lot of the non-standard Simple CFO clients. So most of my clients today are either contractors or developers, construction guys, and then real sort of real estate investors. I've got both young and experienced contractors and developers, guys that own large real estate portfolios, and that have done investing for many years. So those are most of my clients I get. And I would say that Simple CFO provides the methodology for financial clarity. Most CFOs, what we're trying to do is bring a sense of understanding of the numbers to our clients. And then, the profit first and Simple CFO method helps us with that sort of avenue to get to the sort of solutions that are needed, if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah.
Hopefully it makes sense to everybody listening.
Yeah.
I couldn't have said it better myself. And you're right. Like, it's, one of the clients that you actually have, because I've been a CFO for, almost 10 years now, and been practicing, trained CFOs. I've been in the realm of it for a long time. And I know one of the clients actually came to me personally, was referred to me to help them. And I thought, Aaron's way better at this. And you were the first person.
Is that Atlantic and J Street?
No, I don't recall who it was. Well,
okay.
I don't want to name names either, but
sure.
But I know they were referred to me. They came to me, but he had like a pretty big construction business and just had a lot going on that, of course, being the CEO here, I don't really have the time either. But like, you were the first person where I was like, I think Aaron would be really good. And your personality, like, you're easy to talk to, you're easy, you make relationships pretty easy. So, it makes me think, this person could really show some value to him. And then I brought him in Simple CFO's world, and then you're still working with him now. Perfect fit.
Yeah. Well, I get a lot of those clients. I mean, if you want, we can dive into a couple of them. One of my favorite clients is should I name names? Is that okay?
Yeah, we don't need to name names. I mean,
okay. Well, I've got a client that was one of my first clients. He's on the sort of top tier executive package, right? He is a real estate investor. He's probably in his early 60s. He owns, we'll call it $40 to $50 million worth of commercial single tenant retail space. He probably makes $2.5-3 million a year just in cash flow. And he's a great example of how Simple CFO works, because he tried to implement, after reading the book, Simple CFO and the methodology by himself. And he used an outside bookkeeper who tried to set the whole thing up. And when he came to Simple CFO, it was because it wasn't working. And it wasn't working because of a couple different things. And so what we do a lot of times is not only get to know the person and the client, but what's going to work for them. And as someone who is really intelligent, but also very sort of ADHD, and he self-admits, like, I'm a BB in a box, right? Like, I'm always thinking of 10,000 ideas and going in 10 different directions. And so for him, like, one of the things that we have to focus on all of our meetings, and I do this more so than any other client, is I set an agenda and I drive through what I want to accomplish, because otherwise he will go off in 10 different directions. And we sort of miss what the sort of progress and goals of our process is. As a successful real estate investor, cash flow helps hide a lot of issues for him, right? So he's my client that not only has successful, single tenant retail investments, but he was doing a startup in ER vet business that he wanted to do. Throughout the past year, we spent 3 or 4 months working on data co-location centers that he was, making an investment in. And because of his personality, I got a call in the middle of the summer that basically said, Aaron, I'm making a $7 million investment in buying hardware to set up my own data center. And we want to do a data node sort of rent to own or rental node center. And I was like, all right, well, where are the numbers? Did you underwrite this deal? What does this look like? None of that was done. So we, bringing that sort of like real sort of visibility into what the numbers look like and helping him sort of build a business, sort of paramount as he's sort of firing from the hip kind of guy. But the core of his business is he has a sort of real estate operating company, and then he has, QuickBooks running for his personal stuff. And I would tell you the most successful thing with Profit CFO or with Simple CFO and Profit First for him was that 2024 on the business side, he ran expenses of about $300,000 for that particular business. Now, there is no income, so he's just funding this as an operating company. Interest income from some other minor stuff that comes in here, but this is sort of his holding company. Call it a management company. He doesn't really record any income. It's just a way for him to pay a bunch of expenses. And he does the same thing on the personal side. And I think that was about $225,000. So between the two of them, he's spending $600,000 a year in 2024. That jumped up last year to nearly almost $700,000. The money he has, right? Several $million a year that he's gotten positive cash flows, all sort of operating outside of Simple CFO. They're all, partnerships and distributions and everything else. But that cash flow comes in, and then he essentially on a monthly basis works with, first thing we did is we had him switch over to do bookkeeping and accounting services within our platform with Michael and really sort of get, that sort of 10-foot level accuracy that he needed. And then the second thing we did throughout the second half of this year was go through, as you can imagine, if you're spending $600,000 a year, there are thousands of charges, and none of them are payroll related. They're all just dues and subscriptions, education, whatever it is that he decides that would be interesting for him or his companies or his family to sign up.
Next shiny object.
Whatever it is, right? Yeah. And we had to spend an inordinate amount of time walking through all of this stuff. And I eventually just put together a plan for him and said, here's what you're going to do. Because of the, his personality and the ADHD, it was like, no, I'm going to tell you exactly what you're going to do at this point. You're going to go through and cancel this. And there was dozens of stuff that we had to go through and just say, you don't need this stuff anymore. Like, get rid of this, get rid of that. And so we cut down for his budget this year. I think we're down to about 125,000 on the business side, and, personal side, because his wife and his kids are all in that one. We cut that probably in half. But really sort of set up a plan for him, because what he does then is once or twice a month, just writes a check back to each of those businesses as what he calls a bill, pay, and approval. And it's just funding his lifestyle. Okay, well, that's, if you're not in control of that, that just sort of runs away from you. And that's been great, because I think where he really saw at the beginning of this year was the clarity that he had lacked. He understands all the expenses and the money running out, but he doesn't quite get that sort of visibility that the profit first method then was able to set up for him. And I always refer to them as buckets. What bucket do you want to spend, and how much bucket, money do you want to put in each bucket? Then we need to monitor each of those buckets and understand why they're off in any specific time period. So anyway, that's a great sort of mature client. I've got another client who's a brand new client, and in 2 months, I love a construction contractor out in Utah, who's really only been in business for 3 years and had tremendous success last year because of one project, and I think it was a $7 or $8 million school project that he landed. And so he really wants to sort of press ahead into growing his business. But what he lacked along the way, and they had an internal sort of part-time CFO that was a friend of his that, not only, he's known for many years, but also has another job. When I started with them, they were 6 months behind on doing just basic account reconciliation work, right? So, I mean, it looked like they were profitable, but at the end of the day, when we went through and sort of worked on updating all that information, yeah, they weren't as profitable as he thought they were, and they definitely didn't do any sort of, forward-looking budgeting plans. Like, that was not in their sort of radar. And so I've taken a lot of that work off of his sort of plate, and we've set up a plan for him so he can focus on what's most important to him, which is getting business and driving business as sort of the founder of this, contractor and construction company. And then one of I would tell you my superpowers that I work with him and another client on is we put together, I'll call them pitch decks or lender decks, right? Just decks that are more presentable to lenders, because as businesses grow, they understand their business, but they don't understand the commercial lending environment and what needs to be presented to a lender to show them as a viable business to borrow money. And in this particular case, he's doing a new project that's a $3.5 to $4 million ground up mixed use development deal that he wants to hold on the back end of this. So it's construction and permanent financing. But his solution was to go find some of the fly-by-night MCA lenders to finance the whole thing. And that's just not, it's not a viable solution, and it doesn't make the deal work. So, I help guide some of these emerging businesses into more medium and almost institutional level type of work. So that's one of the things I really enjoy, and that what Simple CFO allows me to do within the framework. So, but all of it comes back to using, the tools and the dashboards, and specifically, for example, my Utah construction client never set up a budget in their life. They had an internal CFO, and they've never done budgeting once. So the idea of in the first 2 months to set up a real budget for 2026, and then be able to look at that on a monthly basis within the dashboard, and then set up KPIs for them. And my view on KPIs after many years of doing this is the fewer KPIs that you can identify for a business that are meaningful, the better. The second you get into 6 to 10 to 12 KPIs, they all wash over each other. So set up 4, whatever those 4 are, right? And in this particular client, it was all right, one KPI is just going to be your gross profit margin. We want a goal of doing 25% on a gross profit margin. His is a little higher because he runs a lot of his overhead, or I should say payroll overhead on the expense side. That's okay. I don't need to change that. We don't need to make that a cost of goods. Just understand that your operating expenses are going to be higher, which means you need to set your goal on the gross profit margin higher. So, and then, one of the other interesting things that I think was sort of revealing to him, which he really loved, was the fact that they do weekly payroll with everyone there. Payroll runs about 75% of their overhead because of the way it's set up. Great. Do you realize that in January and May of this year, August and October, that those are 5-week months and not 4-week months, and that significantly affects your cash. And you need to plan for that, especially when you're, instead of paying $75,000, you're going to pay $100,000 that month. Like, those are big and indicator months. When you get in the middle of, the next one coming up in May, and you're in mid-May, and you go, holy, whatever, I don't have any cash this month. Why don't I have any cash? Well, you've had an extra payroll week, and it's coming up at the end of the month. So, that sort of visibility, I think, is what people really love. And you can set that up specifically in the dashboards that we have. So sorry, I just went on a long tangent there, but
that's okay, because it's kind of reverse engineering, because at the end I would ask you for, some stories like that anyway. So get the stories out of the way. But that, I love how you brought some of those things. I'm just thinking in my head, like, so many things. Like, when a client comes on board, we always say we meet you where you are. So that's a bunch of different examples of, clients that are coming in and doing multiple things, like the vet business.
And this from doing this for so long. That first initial battle plan meeting, there's a lot of questions that we go through. And most of the time they'll take the full 90 minutes. But at the end of the day, what you're trying to determine is, where am I meeting you right now in your business? What is it that you've done? And what is it you haven't done? And that is almost entirely different for every single client. And it's some stuff they've done really well, some stuff they've never done, some stuff they're doing poorly. And you're identifying that along the way so that you can put a plan together of, okay, I know where we're going to go in the first 60 days, or I know where we're going to go this year. And these are the things that are important for us to watch. And that'll change by the end of the year. And that'll change throughout the year. So
it'll change in a month. That's what's important about the onboarding process too. So, like, it's not just one thing to have a sales call, right? Because sales, you don't know what you're going through. You don't know what the salesperson is going to bring out of them at that point. So then once they actually become a client, then they do the whole onboarding call. And then we get more information from onboarding, because now you're our client. So it's like, all right, let's tell you what the expectations are and what we're going to do for you, and then show you what that journey looks like. And then they fill out a form, an about me form, give us all the information they can. So then you, as a CFO, can come in and you have all these calls, all this information, and it helps you kind of narrow down, like, okay, this is what I really need to focus on. And then we can kick off with that first 60 days. So perfect transition to, what do you see, like, is the biggest pain point and biggest feelings? Like, take all the clients, not just a few of them, but, like, I feel like they all kind of have the same type of pain when they come in, or the same type of issues. What do you see across most of the clients of, like, they come in a certain way? It doesn't matter. We meet them where they are for what their needs are, but they all have something that they're coming in with.
I would say the commonality for all of them is the thing that Simple CFO provides with all of their fractional CFOs, and that's understanding and visibility into their numbers. What does their numbers mean, right? Like, they don't quite understand all the nuances of the details, if you will. And what I mean by that is, they can all look at a financial statement, and many of them manage their business from their bank accounts, how much cash I have in it, right? That's a classic small business entrepreneur thing. And then they all solve problems in the sort of classic entrepreneur way, which is, I solve problems by throwing people at them, right? Like, whatever that problem is, let's hire somebody or bring somebody in to do that, because they're standing up.
A subscription for it.
Or, right, signing up a subscription or whatever it might be, right? And, apart from the, variety, they all sort of run personal expenses, and as someone who's run a business himself for at different points in my career, we've all done that. We run personal expenses through there. But if you're running a whole lot of personal stuff through there in whatever business that you're doing, and then wondering why you have no cash at the end of the day, actually you might be more healthy than you think. You just don't realize that you're funding your entire lifestyle through your business, and at least providing some of that clarity to them helps them realize, oh, I guess my business is better than I thought. I'm just funding everything from my car to my dining to my, paying my wife or whatever it might be through my business. You can continue to do that if you want, but just understand, let's set that up so you understand the visibility behind it, that you actually are doing that, and you can set up a personal bucket or whatever it might be. So I would say to answer your question, it's understanding their numbers, that sort of visibility into their numbers. And then the other thing that I know you know this better than most, the last thing on any simple CFO client's mind is taxes, right? They never think about taxes until they're due. That is just always something that's bad. Yeah. I don't need to pay them, or if I do need to pay them, I don't have any money to pay them. Okay, well, that works on the short term, but it doesn't work long term, because the IRS may be slow, but they're good. They'll eventually catch up with you. So,
and it's going to hurt when they do. Some people come in too, like, what's so important about a CFO? Because some are like, I have a CPA. My CPA should do that. Or how come my CPA never told me this? Or I have a bookkeeper, but they don't tell me any of this. So what makes us different? What do you think makes us different than like a bookkeeper or an accountant?
Really good. And the people that you've accumulated as part of this whole business, a really good CFO may understand the bookkeeping, but if you're at 10 feet, when I call it the sort of 10-foot level the entire time, you're never able to step up to the 1,000 or 5,000 foot level, right? Taking a step back from all of it and understanding, okay, well, the debits and credits are done correctly or not done correctly or whatever it might be. You might need journal entries to make adjustments here or there. Well, what does that even mean? What does it look like from a health of your business and understanding where you are, where you've been, and where you want to go? And if you're just operating at sort of a very sort of micro level, you're never going to be able to step back from your business and understand, where do I want to go? What are my goals out of this business? And how do I get there? And really, a CFO provides that financial visibility and sets a plan for you, whatever your plan might be. So,
yeah, definitely said well. I like that.
Okay, I made that up.
We're going to coin it. All right. So then when all the clients come in, obviously explaining to them what they need, what type of bookkeeper, what type of an accountant, like, you have what you need in place. Now let's talk about what the first 60 days look like. So we always lay that, foundation for them, that financial foundation for them. So what is that? Walk me through what the first 60 days with a client looks like for you.
Usually my first 60 days, we want to set one or two goals. We want to make them sort of achievable. But really it's about them understanding what I'm trying to accomplish, and me understanding their business and what they want to accomplish. And so my first 60 days is always, I want to dive into your business and understand exactly what it is that you're doing, what you're doing on a day-to-day basis, what you're doing from a business standpoint, and specifically what your goals are, whatever those goals might be. And then using the financial information that we have, or sometimes lack of financial information we have, to set some real goals within that first 60 days that we can accomplish. That might be in one particular business. All right, let's make sure that we're all caught up on end of the year transactions so we can set a budget. And if we can't do that, let's just go through and set a budget anyway and figure out if this kind of forward-looking statement is doable for you, right? And I always try and at least set up one KPI so that they have something that they're sort of in the back of their mind, sort of monitoring. And that might be, for my Utah client, it might just be, hey, look, when I bid out jobs, I want to make sure that as I do that job, at the end of the day, I'm making sure that I'm at least exceeding that 25% gross profit margin on an estimated basis for this job, right? Whatever that might be. Do the numbers and understand it. Don't just run through your deal sheet as you sort of bid this project out, but do the numbers and make sure that it's profitable from your standpoint. And if it's not, why isn't it? And um, there's a great example of I've got a client in North Carolina who came to us. He has a small business where he owns a eyelash, retail, center or whatever it is, right? Like it's women's eyelashes. You go in there. I think it's a chain or a franchise that he bought, right? And then he had a real estate portfolio as well. And so when they came to me as a client, I think he just said, look, I'm looking for some financial visibility. I'm buying out my real estate client, and I've got this lashes business that never really makes any money. Okay, great. On our first 60 days, let's understand whatever that business is, why it doesn't make money, and let's understand what you're doing on your real estate portfolio. And in this particular case, I love this client because he's very unassuming. He's very low key. And what no one realized about his business was that this eyelash business was a one-off thing that he bought for pennies on the dollar. It doesn't make any money. It doesn't lose a whole lot of money. And he's not very interested in it. What he does have is a portfolio of single-family home rentals. He has built this portfolio over 20 years with a partner. His partner died a couple years ago. He's buying out his partner's share in the estate. Very quickly, as we dove into all of his numbers, and I sort of got a real sort of picture of everything that he's put together, he doesn't need my help from the standpoint of budgeting or sort of understanding his numbers. He understands all of that very much at a micro level. What he didn't understand from a step back standpoint was that he owns probably $18 to $20 million worth of real estate assets. He has about $2 million worth of debt, and he's buying out his partner for about $5.5 million. And they have a partnership agreement with a predetermined price for whatever it is that they're going to be buying it out. But he had so much untapped equity into his entire portfolio. And because all he does is focus on the day-to-day operations, I think his pay rate on all of this debt, including the piece that he was buying out from his partner, was something like 18 to 20%, right, on the debt. Which means he's, probably paying, especially after this buyout, somewhere in the neighborhood of 60 or 70 grand a month in debt service payments. But he didn't understand that was crazy. Like that sort of like debt load that he had that he was paying for was excessive. And he'd never gone to a bank. He uses a local credit union bank who does some, small mortgages for him on, pulling up 3 or 4 of these different assets. And he didn't realize that you've really grown to an institutional level. You could put this entire portfolio together, go out and finance it at 50%, walk away with a couple $1 million in refinance proceeds, right? And save what I showed him is that you can save probably 30 grand a month in debt service payments. Just by stepping up, instead of going to Bob's credit union, who he'd been working with, going to Wells Fargo or to Chase or somebody like that. He's going to have people lined up once he's able to put together a nice lender package that will want to be his new business partner, right? Just not something he's ever been experienced with. He started out buying single family homes, and over the course of 25 or 30 years, he now has over 200 of them with significant positive cash flow on his entire business. The lashes business is just a one-off thing. Like he doesn't, care about it, doesn't manage it. And so our plan in the first 60 days was we need to focus on really putting together a professional looking lender package so that you can go out and shop this thing. And I'm going to help him do it. And then let's put your lashes business up for sale. You don't care about it at all anyway. let's figure out, as we dive into the numbers, how we can make some minor improvements to it and sell the thing off, because it's such a minor part of his overall portfolio, and he doesn't even care about it. But when he came to Simple CFO, that was the premier thing. Hey, I own this lashes business. It doesn't make any money, and I'm looking to get, how do I make some improvements? And then, by the way, I'm buying out a partner in my other real estate business, right? So he's great. I love working with him, and I think what I've been able to provide in that first 60 days with him is, let's refocus your plan, like from a step back standpoint. Like, let's refocus your priorities and your plan, because if 90% of your net worth is tied up in a huge real estate portfolio, why don't we really focus on that? We will put some focus on your lashes business, but since you don't really care about it and it's not a priority, let's also look to just unload that thing as part of your overall plan this year. So his plan when he came into Simple CFO, completely different from the plan that we put together for him then. So
that's usually the case. I always say that when you get a different story in the sales call, then you're doing the onboarding call, then with the CFO, because it just depends on what questions you ask, what you bring out of them. And like, we have a foundation, right? So when they come in 60 days, we get to know you. We figure out what's important to you. We implement profit first. We give you a financial assessment. Yep. We roll it out and we tell you what that looks like. But in your case, I think it's a little different because, as we say, we meet you where you are. So every client comes in with something different. And we've had clients that are like, I like the idea of profit first. I read the book. I'm just not ready for it right now. And there's other things that are more pressing. So you can't convince somebody to do something if something else comes first on their mind, especially an entrepreneur, because their brains are my business. And that's why we come in to assist them with financials, so they can do the one thing they do best, which is what? Focus on their business. So
and as part of that profit first plan and that 60-day plan, one of the things that always sticks out that is I think the most key in there is the financial assessment. The onboarding call is a sales call and a get to know you call. The financial assessment, whether it's through the battle plan call or your first couple meetings, that dictates everything else then, right? How quickly can I put profit first? Well, if you're running a really buttoned up and tight business, let's put profit first together immediately. If you're 6 months behind on understanding where your numbers are and 6 months behind on doing account reconciliation, it doesn't make sense for me to set up a profit first until I at least understand where your cash flow is, right? Like, I don't have a good sense of that. So let's start there from that financial assessment, because we can do the profit first plan, but if you don't have the cash to support it, then it's just going to seem like we're running through, random numbers, and you're going to end up borrowing from this bucket or that bucket because you're trying to understand where stuff is. So
and that's the last thing you want to do.
Right.
Is implement something and then you're like, oh no, it's short. Oh no. And that is a perfect example too of like, I read the book, and you can DIY, right? You can download spreadsheets. Sure. You can listen to David speak. You can do a lot of DIY, but what would you say is the most important thing of like why that's different of DIY than actually coming to us and getting that guidance?
My Virginia client, the guy that owns the all the single tenant retail. So what he owns is probably like 20 or 30 Walgreens and CVS's that he's built and then owned for 20 years. He's the guy that tried with his bookkeeper, who's third-party bookkeeper, to implement the profit first plan. And they even sent that over to me when they onboarded, right? Like, oh, we started this process. We've got a great profit first plan. But what they lacked, and because, she was not familiar, they both read the book and they understood the DIY, they could do it themselves, but they didn't go through any financial assessment on the whole thing, right? Like, there was no sort of analysis of his business as a whole or where money was going. So it became a profit first plan that was just funding these sort of repeatable bad behaviors. Okay, great. Well, then it is a profit first plan. And sure, you've got the various buckets set up, but it is a good one, right? Like, my assessment was, yes, this will work, but it's not necessarily a good plan. We need to go through an entire assessment of everything that's going on in your business and then reset this plan. And then, by the way, their profit first plan, as they sort of built it out, and people that are unfamiliar with it, was a very complicated line by line plan of we need to allocate X dollars for this particular expense category and X dollars for this category. And, I would say from a bucket standpoint that there were 30 different buckets. That's not a plan. Like that's barely even a budget at that point, right? Like make it simple, right? So that you can view it and see it. It's got to be simple in some respects. So it's taking the complicated nature of business and simplifying it so that you can understand it. And I always call it the elevator pitch. You should know what your elevator pitch is, either from a simple CFO, from a profit first allocation plan, or even a business plan. My this particular case, my elevator pitch is I'm doing $10 million this year. That's my goal. Okay. And I want to be on a net profit margin somewhere between 9 and 10%. Great. That's awesome. You know your numbers then. That comes from EOS though, right? And you guys I know do EOS, but that was one of the things that always was driven from EOS. Know your numbers. What numbers? Well, know your numbers, whatever those numbers are. Just know your numbers. So,
yep, because numbers don't lie.
Yep.
That's what we always say. I know it's when you come to us, it takes the theory out of it, right? Like it's not just theory. It's built into our tools. It's built into our process. Like you can't not do it right when you come and have someone, standing with you and financial advising you and helping you make those decisions. But in the book, you're like, I got this. So, or someone else says they can implement it and it doesn't go as expected. So,
Yep.
I mean, those are great, great, great examples. One last question for you. So
Sure.
The dashboard, we all know that we use the dashboard as it can be complex, right? Because it's made up for every different type of client at this point. So it's our job as a CFO to walk them through what's important to them, what sheets do they need, what's important. So tell me a couple of the sheets that you use, that you love, that your clients love, that are most useful for you.
The one that resonates most with clients is one of our newer sheets. It's the dashboard sheet. It's the one that shows all the financial snapshot pictures of their business. It's a real-time update. I think I've been, if I understand it correctly, it updates like 3 times a day with real numbers that are being driven from QuickBooks or whatever their accounting system is, right? And it shows really just those sort of visual pictures that are great for founders and owners and businesses, right? Like you can pull a QuickBooks P&L for people and run through the 90 line items, and most of the time it goes right over people's heads. And unless you're knee deep in the business and want to dive into those details, pulling a P&L or even a cash flow statement doesn't matter. Those sort of dashboards, which then take those numbers and put them into a picture to show you like, hey, by the way, this is what my overall revenue looks like. Here's what my cash position looks like. Those are great, right? And then immediately going to that over to the budget to actual. I love using budget to actual, setting that up. What we normally do is set up a budget for somebody based on the historicals, any changes, a variety of that stuff that happens as we sort of set up a monthly budget for the year. When you put that into the budget to actuals, then it'll immediately show you like how far and what percentage you're off in any given category that you've set up within your budget. Okay, guys, like payroll was right on line, but you spent, 50% more on your licenses and dues. Let's dive into that. Why is that one higher this month? And why did we miss that on the budget? Do we need to adjust the budget? My personal opinion is no, you never want to adjust the budget. You can do once in a mid-year adjustment, my personal opinion, but if you're changing your budget constantly, then it ceases to be a sort of measuring stick, if you will. And so when showing them those sort of, I would call them major categories that we've identified in the budget, and then those sort of changes are great. And then the other sheet I always start with as part of our 60-day plan as we go through, there's a stoplight page and then a goals page, right? Like just setting up the goals. We talk about goals and KPIs. I usually start with the some of those KPIs and the goals, and then there's a separate KPI worksheet in which you can then sort of identify some of those KPIs in there that are important. That gets a bit more granular, but the goal worksheet and that sort of stoplight worksheet are the stuff that we identify along the way that are either risks for achieving whatever it is that we want to achieve that year. In the case of let's say my contractor out in Utah, one of the things that we identified was his, his workload, if you will. He was trying to dive into many different aspects of his business. And for them to be successful, his entire focus, or 80% of his focus, needs to be on driving revenue into his business, because he's the sales guy. He's the one getting the deals and bidding out these projects. That should be your focus. So let's make sure we revisit that at least once a month. Like, are you doing that? Are you taking a step back and getting more involved in some of the accounting or employee management or whatever it might be? Okay, is there somebody else there that can help do this, or you can assign some of these tasks to, so that you can focus on what's important? And if you have those written down in some of those tabs, they help you understand, 2 months ago we identified this. Are we still keeping, on track with some of this stuff? Anyway, those are some of my favorite tabs within those worksheets.
Yeah, I love that too, because what's that book? It's not not about who, not about what, it's about who. So it's not always like the entrepreneur business owner doesn't have to take it on every time. Like, you don't have to do every task. You can find the person that's best to do it. So then you can focus on what you do best, and we can help you get that done.
And I think that's a great point, because that is the entrepreneur mindset that every entrepreneur starts with when they start their business. They are doing every task all the time, and they're always involved with it. And eventually, if you're even moderately successful and you're growing your business, you can't do that. And so sometimes it's solving the problem with people, right? But then you get into the sort of trap that entrepreneurs get into, where they consistently throw people at problems to solve them for them. And then you run into, or, outside services. And then you run into, I have no cash because I'm spending X, Y, and Z on this service or that service or these guys or that guy or whatever it might be. Okay, great. Let's reevaluate that. Let's reevaluate what's important so that you can stay on track, but also understand that you don't need to spend this much money on all these outside services, whether they're educational, whether they're dues and subscriptions, whether they're people, third parties, whatever it is. So,
yeah. And everything, everything's a price. Like, we don't want to dwindle down the owner's pay, because what's the one, I think there's a book too, and I can't think of the name, but David talks about it a lot too, that when you're an owner, what are the tasks you should be spending money on? Are you spending your time on $15 to $20 an hour tasks,
right.
50 to 150? You shouldn't be doing anything that's within that range. As an owner, you should be doing anything that's like $300 an hour plus task. You shouldn't be doing all the admin. Someone else can do that. And also, like, you don't just hire someone different for every problem, because maybe there's the same person or the same subscription or the same whatever that can actually do these multiple things. Correct. And they're sitting around twiddling their thumbs waiting for something else.
You build throughout time all these different services and not realize that you have 5 of them, and one of those people could do all of them, and it would be 10% more to that one person, and you can eliminate all the other ones. And that happens all the time. So, and it's those details, right, as part of the, financial assessment part in that first 60 days that I think are eye-opening for people. So, because they just don't do that. They get to the end of the year and it's time to plan for the next year. And, I don't really want to dive into all the details. It's, mundane, right? So that's why we're there.
Yep. That's why we're there. All right. Well, we got a lot of examples.
Cool. I'm glad I'm glad we got to do this. So
me too. Thank you for being here. I mean, the examples, the way people come into us, the tools that we have. I mean, I think we've dug into everything that we can possibly do. And we know from your clients, like, how different they are and how they come in and how you've been able to change their lives and transform their business, which is amazing. Thank you for those stories. Thank you for being here. It's been amazing. This is exactly what we do every single day, every single client. So if you're listening now and thinking like, oh my gosh, that sounds like me, or that's how I feel, or, I'm not passionate about another business that I purchased too, or we do get this a lot too. I have a partner and I'm buying my partner out, or something's happening with the partnership. It seems to happen.
Major changes, right? Lifestyle, life changes for that. So, yeah.
So if that's the way that, if you're listening and you feel that way too, like, give us a call, head over to simplecfo.com, book a discovery call, get the clarity that you deserve, get someone like Aaron on your side that can give you that financial guidance and really help you through that, because, that's what we're here for. That's what we're here to do. So thank you, Aaron. You have been amazing to talk to. See you all in the next episode.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Simple CFO Case Files on the Profit First for Real Estate Investors podcast. If you found this helpful, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss our guest interviews featuring other real estate investors and our Profit First chats with David Richter. If you're ready to bring clarity and structure to the finances in your business, visit profitrei.com to apply for a free financial discovery call with our team.